think you want to play tech if you like being the plucky underdog who punches up efficiently, or if you like playing mind games with your opponents, because you can do that a lot with camo tokens.
All right, welcome back, everybody. We are talking about the Tartary Army Corps, better known as TAC, and I am unfortunately subjected to TAC quite regularly by Mr. Kevin. How's it going, Kevin?
How you doing?
So, yeah, the idea here is we're going to talk Tartary Army Corps. This is a sectorial for Ariadna. It seems like it's one of the more popular Ariadnan sectorials because there's dogs and there's cool soldiers if you're into the kind of Russian aesthetic for Ariadna. But we're going to talk for kind of about very entry level things here. So we're going to kind of go over some of the basics of how you can get started playing TAC and what to expect from them with some of the entry level stuff, and then we'll kind of talk a little bit about some next steps for folks who are getting started with them. So if you're brand new to the game or you're looking to switch over to TAC, hopefully this will be helpful to give you an idea of what to expect out of them. I think with most armies in Infinity, if there's an action pack, the action pack is probably the best way to buy in to the army. I know you're not a huge fan of this action pack as far as how useful everything in there is, but just from a high level, if somebody's brand new, do you think this is a good first purchase, or do you think that people would be better off collecting it a different way?
It's definitely a good way to get bulk bodies out on the field. Like it's 10 models right off the rip. It's pretty affordable. And it was how I started tech, so it would be disingenuous of me to say that people shouldn't buy it first.
Yeah, I mean, one of the cool things about Infinity is that it's so friendly to proxying. So, like, a few things in here might not have the best loadout that's available for that particular model, but you just let your opponent know that you're running them as whatever the other loadout is, and you can get away with that very easily. One of the kind of important things with Infinity, and this is especially important for new players, one of the important things about this game compared to other games is that you have to have some really cheap guys in your list in most cases because you want to get more bodies on the table, because basically the more guys that you have, the more stuff your more important models will be able to do, because you generate orders based on the number of people that you have, and then you can use those orders to give orders to your more important guys. So one of the important things about the action packs is they often come with your really cheap basic, just run of the mill dudes. For TAC, they are the line Kazakhs. Do you think the line Kazakhs are particularly notable for a sort of core infantry soldier? I think they're about as basic as it gets. One of the nice things is they're extremely cheap, which is cool. But anything about this profile that strikes you as particularly notable?
Um, Kind of. There's one nice thing about them, and that is you can take a forward observer for 10 points at whip 13, and quite often I'll have a couple extra points to just upgrade any line Kazakhs I've taken into these, and now you have a pretty reliable button pusher on the later stages of the game, just in case they've gone after your other ones.
Yeah, so I mean, just from the profile perspective, like from the stat perspective, these guys are as about as basic as it gets. They're not very good at fighting in melee. They're not particularly good at shooting. Um, their willpower is 13. That's pretty good for the price point, I think. And they have armor 1, so they're a little bit more survivable than than the bare minimum. But just to kind of explain what you mentioned, so a forward observer not only has the ability to sort of highlight or spotlight an enemy model that it can see, so that your other better models can shoot them a little bit more accurately, but also if they're a forward observer, that means that in most cases they can do objectives. And the key thing that you were just highlighting there is that they're extremely cheap for someone who can do objectives. Typically, you'll spend a little bit, the point cost for anybody that can push buttons is going to be a little higher than that. So a 10-point objective runner is pretty solid.
Yeah, I think Tartary Army Corps actually has a bunch of really cheap specialists, and sometimes I'll find that over a third of my list ends up being capable of doing scenario objectives without me even thinking about it. Like I didn't intentionally put them in there.
Yeah, so in most cases, normal soldiers can't do objectives. You have to be one of a variety of sort of specialists. You may have an ability called Specialist Operative, which just means you can do objectives. But other than that, forward observers, paramedics, doctors, engineers, those types of people. I'm sure there's a few that I forgot. Um, but those type of special characters have the ability to do objectives. Um, and yes, I have noticed that you often have way too many people that do objectives because when I play White Banner, I usually struggle to get enough button pushers on the table, and you have way too many. So, in a normal list in a full size game, how many line Kazakhs do you find yourself taking? I mean, their availability is total, meaning you can hire as many of these as you want. So theoretically, the sky is the limit. You could have all 15 of your models be line Kazakhs. That's probably not a good idea, but how many do you find yourself running when you play them?
I usually take one regular one and a paramedic, but I've taken up to three or four sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty standard as far as the core infantry goes. Obviously, there's some exceptions to that. There is also, like with most armies, there is an option for a lieutenant for the line Kazakh. So if you haven't played before, every army has to have a model that's considered the lieutenant, and mostly the key thing there is that they're going to get an extra order that can only be used on the lieutenant or another model that has a special rule that says they can use it. But if you lose them, it causes you to basically have a whole turn where everything is just going to go real bad for you. It means that things are going to kind of fall apart, and there's a bunch of rules that we don't need to get into that deal with that. Um, do you think it's ever worth taking the Line Kazakh lieutenant? They're very cheap. He's 9 points, which is pretty. That I think that's the cheapest lieutenant I can think of off the top of my head, but also very squishy and easy to kill. So kind of tricky to justify that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Tartary Army Corps is a pretty defensively oriented army because you can gum up the midfield with so much stuff,
Mm.
all of it which is camo tokens. So taking him is pretty safe. You can usually find a nice little place to tuck him away. I personally don't take him, but that's just because I take Verone in pretty much every game because he's such a phenomenal lieutenant.
Yeah, so having other better options for lieutenants is always nice, and in some cases they may have to be your lieutenant. So then you don't have the option to choose something else. But we'll get back to what you mentioned about the camouflage tokens because I'm sure it's going to come up multiple times in this conversation.
Yeah,
Um,
that's what they do.
yeah, but the other thing to highlight here is for line Kazakhs, no special rules, just as bare bones as it gets. So you have your stats, you have a couple, you have a paramedic option, the forward observer option. They're as basic as it gets. They have some weapon options, so you can take a heavy machine gun, missile launcher, but the normal ones even come with rifles instead of combi rifles. Most core line infantry in this game are going to have combi rifles. But Ariadna, as they are the mutters, they are the low tech faction. They don't even have nice guns. They have regular old rifles.
Yeah, they're just combi rifles with worse range bands.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, an important concept in this game is range bands because if you're at the optimal range for your weapon when you're shooting, it's going to give you a better. It's going to make you more likely to hit. If you're at a suboptimal range or a bad range, it might make it much harder to hit. So that's really important because it's going to raise or lower the odds of you hitting or getting hit when you're in a gunfight. So having fewer options with your range bands is definitely not something that you want to see. So in the box you get three of them. So notable, they are all three rifle models. But of course, like I mentioned, you can just proxy them. So if you want to run an HMG heavy machine gun guy, just make sure you have a way to distinguish that and make sure your opponent understands so it's not confusing for them, and that should be no problem. Next up, we have the Tank Hunter. I like this model, just the model. I don't remember you playing a tank hunter. Maybe you did in a game a while back. But we get the tank hunter with the AP rifle. Tell me about tank hunters. This is another like you actually AV4, which means you can take a bunch of them, but it's a pretty expensive model, certainly compared to the line Kazakh. So tell me a little bit about these guys.
Yeah, usually if I'm taking a tank hunter, you will never find out because I take the chain of command one and I hide it just in case you manage to get an attack run off on Veronin. Because when you take him, you're literally telling your opponent, "Hey, that's my lieutenant."
Mm.
But he's pretty good. You put him somewhere. He has Mind Layer, so it's just two camo tokens next to each other, one of which is gonna blow up in your opponent's face if they go after it.
Yeah, so uh, camouflage is a really important rule, especially in this army. So this basically says that when you deploy, you're going to deploy as a little camo. We call it a camo token, but it's a camouflage marker. So instead of it being a model, it's just a marker that's the size of a base. And your opponent's not going to know what it is until something happens. Either you act and choose to reveal yourself, or your opponent has a way to reveal you. And that means that you can kind of play a little cup game where, you have, in most cases, maybe 2, 3, 4 camo markers. In this army, maybe quite a bit more than that if you're being really sneaky. And your opponent just won't know what's what until they find out the hard way, or do something clever. So not only is this guy going to deploy as a camo marker, but if you take the profile that has Mind Layer, he's going to deploy with a mine near him that is going to also be a camo token. And then your opponent doesn't know which one's which. And then just to cover the chain of command thing, so chain of command, if I remember right, just says that if your lieutenant dies, you become the lieutenant. Is that right?
Yeah, you don't suffer from loss of lieutenant, and they're immediately promoted to the lieutenant.
Yeah. So instead of having all the horrible things happen from losing a lieutenant, this guy will just step up and take the lieutenant's place, which is really nice. Like you said, if your opponent knows who your lieutenant is and goes after them, you have that little backup there to make sure it's not quite as bad, even though you lost a piece that you might like. Notably, you can also take a tank hunter lieutenant who also has Mind Layer. Oh, so a couple of other things to touch on. Mimetism 3. So if you watched the last video that I did where we talked about Corregidor in a similar format to this, we talked quite a bit about mimetism. So this is an ability that just says when your opponent's shooting you, unless they have some way to get around it, they're going to be at a -3 to their accuracy, which is really important because, especially if you're a little bit more fragile, avoiding getting hit is going to be a major thing, and it can offset certain things like being in the wrong range band or being out of cover or something like that. So these guys have that in addition to being camouflage tokens. They have surprise attack, so they're going to get an additional. They're going to give a -3 to the target when first reveal from camo if it's the active turn. So these are all things that make them even sneakier, even trickier to deal with.
Yeah, that's really good on the portable autocannon because usually you're putting your opponent on at least neg 9s, neg 12s if you catch them at a bad range bed for them, and you do not want to be taking hits from the portable autocannon.
What is the portable autocannon's profile? I don't think I've ever
Um,
checked it out.
it's AP and explosive. They actually just got a huge glow up. They got a +1 special die, so now they're rolling 3 dice in active. Or if you reveal them as an ARO, they're still rolling 2 dice, which is pretty nasty.
Yeah, so a special die basically means when you roll, you're gonna get one extra die, but then you have to remove one die out of the pool. But it's really important because it means that if you're gonna, there's a variety of reasons why it's really important. But when you roll against somebody in a face-to-face roll in Infinity, any of your results that are better than your opponents are gonna cancel their results, which is really good. And then also, obviously, you can just flat out miss. So having one extra die doubles your chances of hitting and potentially stopping your opponent from doing something bad to you or getting opportunity to actually hit them. AP and explosive, that's a really good combination. So that means that when your opponent gets hit, their armor save is going to be halved and they have to take it 3 times, which is pretty brutal.
Yeah, it just deletes models from the board, and you can, since they start in a camo token, you can kind of hide one in your deployment zone as something more innocuous, like a miner or decoy. And if they don't respect the token, you're going to get a free shot with one of the most dangerous guns in the game on them.
Yeah, the possibility of survival, which is sort of like the strength of the weapon, is a 5, which is pretty good. And it's normally at 2 shots. It's got some kind of strange range bands. It's like a short to mid range weapon, but yeah, like you said, if you put that in the right position and surprise your opponent, not only are you gonna they're hitting you on -6, -9 or worse, but if you hit them, you're almost certainly gonna delete them, and this could even be a really good piece to take out like heavier armored stuff. Because it's got the explosive, it's gonna make them take the save multiple times, and it's got AP. Like I said, that's a great combination. So
Yeah, it's good against multi-wound heavy infantry, anything with remote presence. I play against a lot of Hawk, and they have regeneration,
mhm.
and you can't regenerate if you're blown into little pieces and
Right.
removed from the board.
Yeah, so in this game, if you take enough damage to basically go down to 0 health, which for most models that means you took 1 damage. You kind of fall on the floor and you go down, but your opponent or your opponent can heal their models a variety of ways, and there are models that have special rules that allow them to come back, like regenerate. But if you did an additional damage to them, then they just get removed and then they can't come back. So if you're doing explosive damage, that's a good way to make sure that they go away for good, and your opponent can't bring them back. So another one of the profiles for the tank hunters is forward deployment +8. So this is going to let them sort of deploy further up the board. But they have an AP submachine gun, which is a very short range weapon. Do you ever see yourself using these guys as more of a mid board deterrent? I'm not sure I see a great use case for that, especially in this
The
army,
only
because are there
problem,
better options?
yeah, the only problem I have with that profile is that the Strelok is 17 points for mine layer and decoy, and you're getting the same mine, so it's just like a worse version.
Yeah, for more points.
Yeah, the AP submachine gun's cool, I guess. I'd probably rather have a shotgun.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the submachine guns roll a lot of dice, which is cool, but they're not spectacular, and they're pretty much only effective when you're very, very, very close. In which case, a shotgun may be the better option. Um, AP HMG, I'm a big fan of AP HMGs because they have really long range and you can kind of stay in a little bit more of a safe area and still roll a ton of dice. And having AP is also obviously very good. For 33 points, do you ever see yourself taking the AP HMG when you can just spend 36 points and get the portable autocannon with the special die? I'm not sure I would.
Yeah, I think I would just because it's 4 dice versus 2.5 dice.
Yeah.
But normally, if I'm going to take an AP HMG, I'm just going to spend 11 more points and take the Vet Kazakh with the AP HMG. Because then you can put him into a fire team. He's a better gunfighter, more survivable.
Yeah, I mean, so if somebody's playing their first game with this guy, would you suggest the autocannon or the HMG just to kind of see how some of these things work, and how should folks be running them? Do you think?
Yeah, I think if you're going to put the Tank Hunter in, I would probably choose the APHMG over the portable autocannon if you're new,
Yeah,
just because it's easier to know when to use that. But if you want to have a lot of fun and just delete models off the table, the portable autocannon will definitely do that for you.
yeah. The HMG is probably more forgiving because you get more dice, and again, you can stay further away from the danger. But yeah, I think probably after a game or two, the autocannon is going to be the one because once you see that explosive damage, you're going to be like, okay, I'm going to keep this. And I think the autocannon model, if I remember correctly, that's the model I'm thinking of. That's super cool because that portable autocannon is really really diesel. So
Yeah, it's really nasty. I did 6 saves to a model in one activation, which was insane. Just the robot just melted away.
gross, and I hate it. If you're enjoying this video and you want to support the channel, then there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. The first would be to pick up some merchandise through my merch store. You can grab a t-shirt, a hoodie, a mug, a sticker, all sorts of cool stuff like that. You can also shop using my affiliate links. So if you're going to make any purchases from any of these companies, you can use the links in the description below to make your purchases, and it will go directly to supporting the channel at no extra cost to you. There's also a link for my Ko-fi if you would just like to give me a tip, or my Patreon if you want to support me longer term. I have a bunch of different tiers there, and there are all sorts of benefits available to people, such as early access to videos, ad-free videos, the opportunity to vote in polls about upcoming content, and extra entries into the giveaways that I run occasionally. But if none of that is your cup of tea, no problem at all. Just make sure that you're subscribed to the channel and leave a like on the video. It actually helps a tremendous amount. And if you want to go the extra mile, then consider sharing the video out with some friends who you think might find it interesting. The YouTube algorithm is not kind to small YouTubers, so that helps a whole bunch. Other than that, consider joining the Discord, also linked in the description, where you can come and hang out with me and the rest of the community and talk games. But with that, let's get right back to the video. All right, so the veteran Kazakh. I have unfortunately been on the receiving end of these guys too many times. And we have just an absolute ridiculous list of special rules here. So tell me about the veteran Kazakhs. We get one with a T2 rifle, which we can talk about as well, but that's just a ridiculous amount of special rules. So where do you want to start?
Probably with the AP HMG. That's the one I take the most. It's real easy to duo them with a Frontovic, and then you're rolling 5 dice on BS13 with MIM3, a billion special rules. They're not really affected by negatives ever. You know, like we joke around sometimes that the Vet Kazakh special rules basically just equate to removing all of your opponent's special rules against them.
Mm-hmm.
But they'll stand around for a long time. They have NWI, which is nice. I think the medkit Fizz equals 15 is a bit of a trap because it's a 75% chance to pass, but really what it is a 25% chance to kill your model. That's you don't need to heal them. They have NWI. Like they're already moving around and they're active. Why am I going to risk killing my own model when they're still functional?
Yeah, so just to explain that, so NWI basically means that when you go down to 0 health, instead of falling down and needing to be healed, you basically drag yourself around while you're in that condition, and you can keep fighting like normal. But if you take another point of damage, you just die and you're removed like normal. Medikit Fizz 15 means that when you try to heal the model, normally they have to take a Fizz check, which is basically the check to see whether they successfully heal or whether they take an additional damage. It's kind of a risky move, and this makes them a little easier to heal. Normally their Fizz is 12, so this brings it up to a 15, which means you have a 75% chance to pass it, but if you fail it, then you're gone.
Yeah, and since they're the low-tech faction, none of them have cubes, so you have no options for re-rolling that save. If you fail it, it's out.
Mm-hmm.
I do also like the lieutenant version, the forward observer, X-visor, because they're a pretty decent button pusher and they're very survivable. And the new like dodge +1 special dice is really good because you can like throw them into the middle of the board, push a button, put them on suppressive, and you're either rolling 3 dice on 0 range bands up to 24 inches, or you're taking dodge on 2 dice with Fizz 12, which isn't bad.
Yeah, so dodging is one of the options that you have when your opponent is shooting at you, or if you see them walk by. Anytime your opponent is in their active turn, whenever your models see their models do something, they get an opportunity to respond to it. So you can shoot back, but one of the more common things that you might want to do is to dodge. And normally you just have one roll, try to roll your Fizz, and hope that you pass. But this is I don't know that there's many other, if any other models that have something like this, but they have a special rule dodge +1 special die, so they're actually going to roll 2 dice and remove 1 afterwards, which makes it much more likely that they're going to successfully dodge, which is pretty great. And then on top of that, they, like you mentioned, they're just ignoring opponent special rules. They have a variety of special rules here. We don't need to get into all the nitty-gritty details, but basically they have a bunch of special rules that make them very hard to sneak up on. They have special rules that basically, prevent your opponent from using some of their special rules. They're immune to shock, so certain kinds of ammo will, if they do a point of damage, will automatically just remove a model from the table, shock ammo, even if it had multiple health, even if it has no wound incapacitation, anything like that. So this guy's immune to shock, so it won't have that effect.
Yeah, they're pretty much immune to everything. Like all the most common counters to heavy infantry don't really work on these guys because they're not hackable. They're immune to immobilized B, and it's going to take a lot of orders to remove them.
Yeah, and then on top of that, they're shooting on a 13, which is pretty. It's not spectacular, but it's like if you're going to be in a gunfight, that's kind of where you want to be or higher.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll take a 13 BS with MIM 3 over 14 BS any day.
right, because your opponent is kind of losing out on 3 points of their accuracy again, unless they have tech to get around that. The other thing is, so there's kind of two weapon profiles. We sort of touched on it a little bit, but as far as your main weapons go, you have the APHMG and the T2 rifle. So the APHMG is kind of a longer range. You're going to get 4 dice, pretty strong, and it's also got AP. So your opponent's going to half their ammo or their armor when you hit them. Tell us about the T2 rifle, because this is something you see coming a lot in this
It's a
faction.
normal rifle. It's not that great, but since they have the X visor on this profile, it's actually pretty solid on the range bands because your -3 is now a 0 up to I think 32 inches, and it's damage 7, so you're likely to make saves against it. But if you fail it, T2 ammo means you take 2 damage and you're basically off the field. Like even heavy infantry are incapacitated by that most of the time.
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
don't really want to roll the dice to begin with,
Right, it makes it risky. It makes that weapon would otherwise not be a huge threat to a heavier model, but that makes it like, okay, you're probably not gonna hurt me, but if you do, it's gonna hurt a lot because most things can't survive 2 damage.
Yeah, they also have a light flamethrower, which it's just great for anything close up, trying to tag them on the way in. You don't want to take light flamethrower hits.
Yeah, the light flamethrowers, I've definitely underestimated them before. So the cool thing about flamethrowers is they're template weapons, which means you can potentially hit multiple targets with it, and it kind of interacts with how the reactions work in a funny way. But we don't really need to get into that. But the important thing is, well, you hit your opponent automatically. You don't have to roll to hit them because it's a template. But if they fail their save, they have to keep taking it, and they keep taking more damage until they pass a save. So this is another way to really chew through multi-wound models pretty effectively. It's very scary. And just to touch on the X visor, basically what the X visor does is it doesn't give you positive modifiers to your accuracy, but anytime you would have a negative modifier, it sort of reduces it one step. So instead of having a -6 in the worst range bands, you'd have a -3. And instead of having a -3, you have a 0.
Yeah, it also works on a couple things like Discover too, which is nice.
Yeah. So that's going to kind of mean that it's not going to help you get a really good shot off, but it's going to mean that you're not getting any really bad shots off, which can be really good, especially if your weapon doesn't have spectacular range bands.
Yeah, and with suppressive fire, that last range band up to 24 inches is at a -3. So if you put them in suppressive, they're basically on zeros all the way through, which is pretty solid. 3 dice on an arrow is always nice.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a way that you can kind of set the model up to be much more defensive. It sort of limits some of the things that they can do, but it makes them much more defensive and kind of gives your opponent a lot of interesting problems to have to deal with. And especially for this guy, because a lot of the ways you would try to tackle a model who's on suppressive by like sneaking up on them or getting around them, this guy, he's going to make that really hard because he's got all these special rules. He's very expensive because he's got so many tricks. You're looking at between 36 and 45 points, which is pretty steep. But for what he brings to the table, it seems like that's a pretty good trade-off. Another interesting thing is several of these profiles are also specialists.
Yeah, anything without an HMG is a forward observer or a paramedic, so you can push buttons with all of them.
Yeah, which is pretty cool because, like you said, being able to dodge super well means it's a little less risky to run out into an exposed area to push a button, but also, again, because he ignores so many of your opponent's special rules, and he's so hard to kind of sneak up on or trick, um, it means it's a little bit easier to kind of take those risks and not worry about being punished quite as badly.
Yeah, and they're armor 4 BTS 3, so if you do get something through, there's a chance that, it just bounces off of him, or it just puts him on NWI and he's still standing around.
Yeah, armor 4 is pretty solid. I think in this faction, that's one of the higher that you can expect. There are certainly models that have higher armor than that, but it's still pretty good. It basically means that when your opponent hits you, you're going to take the possibility of survival of their attack, which is usually going to be somewhere between like 5 and 7 or 8. You add your armor to that, and then you have to roll under that total. Plus, if you have cover, you're going to add 3. So adding an extra 4 means you're going up a pretty significant percentage on your save. The BTS, this is sort of like a lot of people call it your magic save. It's like your special save. This is for things like hacking programs or certain weapons that, like viral weapons that don't target you the old-fashioned way. And having a 3 on that is pretty solid. A lot of models that have high armor don't have great BTS or vice versa, so he's pretty solid across both of those.
Yeah, and Tartary Army Corps actually struggles with their BTS scores on most models, to be honest.
Because it's like the high-tech kind of armor, right? It's not just weld a bunch of plates to your chest and try to tank the bullets. It's like, be fancy and high-tech, and that's not their thing. So it
Yeah,
makes sense.
so if your opponent brings a bunch of viral weapons, you're going to have a bad time.
Mm-hmm. For sure. All right, next up we have the Scouts. So these are these are kind of like a mid-cost, we're looking at 20-ish points with a handful of special rules, several of which we've already touched on here. Do you usually run Scouts, and what are your thoughts on Scouts?
I normally take at least one scout, and it's the Ohotnik scout with Mine Layer 2. If I really need to, I'll switch it for the Forward Observer, but like I said, I'm usually accidentally putting so many specialists in, just like with my general list building, that I very rarely feel the need to do so.
Yeah.
But the Ohotnik is great. It's got T2 ammo. The Scout has BS attack AP, and in my opinion, the Ohotnik has the best range band in the game. So it's a great little ambush guy where if you catch someone moving out of cover, they're not respecting your camo tokens. You can take a single shot at them and potentially remove them from the board, or you can use it as a nice surprise attack on your own turn to remove a problematic piece near it.
Yeah, so the Ohotnik is 0 at up to 8 inches, and then it's +3 between 8 inches and 32 inches. That's a pretty forgiving giant band of where a lot of engagements take place, unless it's with a sniper rifle or a missile launcher.
Yeah, and
Where
since
it's at +3.
they're infiltrate, they're going to be in the middle of the board every time.
Right, so
So like that
infiltration
Ohotnik will
means
never be at anything but +3.
yeah, so infiltration means they get to deploy outside of the normal deployment zone, and they have mimetism -3, and they start as a camo token. So it's going to be the shell game where you don't know which one's the model and which one is, if you have mine layer 2, which is of the which one is one of the 2 mines, and then when you do reveal or your opponent discovers you're at mim 3, so you're harder to hit, and you're almost always going to be at your +3. So that's a pretty crazy combination there.
Yeah, it's definitely a fun piece. I bring it almost every list.
Yeah, so it's only the one profile that gives you mine layer, but it is mine layer 2, which is pretty great.
Yeah, that's actually pretty new. That was part of the big TAC update. It used to be Mine Layer 1. But now, since you're dropping the 3 camo markers, you can actually better hide what kind of model that is, because it could be a scout with an Ohotnik, or it could be a Strelok or something else.
Yeah, and again, every time you add another model to your deployment that deploys in a camo token, you're making it exponentially harder for your opponent to know what's what, because they all just look like ammo tokens to your opponent. So it can be difficult for you to remember which one is which, or where you put everything. But And there's tokens and things like that that'll help with that. But that's a huge thing for when you're setting up. Having your defenses set up correctly so your opponent can't just run over and wreck face on their first turn is really important. But if they also have no idea what they're facing or where any of that stuff is, that's a that's a huge advantage.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun play style, and I find that like when you're playing TAC, often you'll end up with up to 9 camo markers without even trying.
Yeah.
Like if I take one scout with mine layer 2 and one Strelok with mine layer, that's 6 camo tokens between the two models.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a couple other cool things they have BS attack AP, which means, and that's just on all of their profiles. So anytime they're shooting, they have AP ammo, meaning that your opponent's having their armor, which is really good. They have a couple of different options for their mines. They have shock mines, para mines, and EM mines. Again, only one of them has mine layer. So what mine layer does is it means that when you deploy, you actually get to have a mine already deployed with you. And again, in this case, it's 2 mines. Normally, you have to actually go and put down a mine. You have to use your activations to do that. So that's a pretty big advantage to just have them already set up at the beginning of the game. They have the Ohotnik, and then they also the box actually comes with the boarding shotgun option. Interestingly, also T2, so will do 2 damage if you hit. But then there's also a sniper rifle option. Do you think you ever get any? Can you ever see a reason to take the sniper rifle?
The only reason I would ever take the sniper rifle is maybe like points, like a points restriction, but I
Right.
might just find another model to put in its place.
Yeah, it's cheaper than the Ohotnik options, but it definitely seems like this profile is focused on the Ohotnik quite a bit because I think 5 out of the 7 profiles are Ohotnik.
Yeah, it's just such a good gun. I
Yeah.
think the sniper rifle is a little better against armored targets because it's damage 5 instead of the 6 on the Ohotnik, and since it's T2, they both have the same armor.
Hmm. Yeah, and obviously the sniper rifle is going to work better from longer range bands. So depending on how the rest of your deployment is set up, you may prefer to have something that's a little bit longer range, but there may be better options for that. Again, depending on
Yeah,
how that points
with
breaks down.
infiltrate, you're going to be able to pick your engagements anyway.
Right. Next, we have the Ratnik, another one of the models that I am particularly fond of in this army. So you don't get a lot of high tech stuff in TAC, as we've mentioned a few times. You don't really get a lot of high tech stuff in Ariadna at all. But if you do want to take a big stompy boy, we have the Ratnik. I was going to try to pronounce its full name, but I'm not even going to go for it because I don't know what that word is. But we'll just call it the Ratnik. A couple of interesting things going on here. So this is kind of like it looks like a tag. So in a lot of other armies, you'll have things called tags, which are these big mech suits that get driven around and can do really cool stuff. This is actually technically not a tag. It is technically just heavy infantry. It's just a dude in a really big armor suit, which is interesting. And there's a few ways that impacts the way they play and rules and things like that. Not super relevant, especially when you're brand new. But tell me about the Ratnik and what you would do with one of these guys. Obviously, they're very expensive.
Yeah, they just got BS attack +1 burst, which makes the piece a lot more fun. I
Just always
do
rolling one more die.
enjoy
That's pretty
taking
good.
them occasionally, but to me, they just kind of feel like a worse version of the Vet Kazakh with the APHMG. I have a lot of fun fielding the heavy rocket launcher one, but you're kind of exposing yourself to hackers, and as Ariadna, you just don't have a lot of anti-hacking tech.
Yeah, so being the low tech faction, you don't have a lot of exposure to things like hacking because only certain types of models can be hacked. But because of that, you also have no ways to deal with that in the event that you do have something that can be hacked. And this is one of the few things in the army that can be hacked. And that means that if your opponent has hackers, they're at risk of things that are going to just kind of fully shut them down. And when you're spending 46 points on a model, if your opponent can get an arrow and just stop you from doing anything, that's going to feel kind of bad.
Yeah, we'll say taking the AP Spitfire in a duo with the front of it will allow you to roll 6 dice with it, which is hysterical every time.
Yeah, I mean that's one way to describe it. Gross would be the way I would describe it, but um, basically what he's saying is that you can pair them up with another model. That's kind of more of a high level thing you probably don't want to worry about to start, but if you pair them up with another model, you get to roll more dice when you attack, and because they already get the +1 burst with a Spitfire, which is a gun that gets 4 dice to begin with, that's 4 +1 +1, which is 6, which is pretty brutal. That is a whole lot of dice coming at your opponent. Um, a couple of interesting things they have here. So obviously, because it's a big, heavy armor suit, you got armor 6, so they're pretty tough to hit to begin with. They have multiple health, so you have 2 health, and they also have transmutation 1. So this is something that may come up later on when we talk about some other purchases that folks might want to pick up. But tell us about transmutation.
Well, basically, once they have taken their first wound, they just get worse. Like their profile changes, their armor goes down to 4, their BTS drops down to 0, which makes them very vulnerable to hacking, and their movement drops down. They're originally 4-4, they're going to drop down to 4-2, and I believe their close combat gets worse too.
Yeah, it goes down 2 points. Yeah, so transmutation kind of represents them changing, and in this case, it represents them being damaged. And because it's kind of shoddy technology, they lose a lot of their abilities. You may see this type of mechanic in other games where things have different kind of profiles. As they get more damaged, they get worse as they go. Interestingly, there are things in the game that get better after you hurt them, which we may talk about a little later. But so this is kind of one of the ways that the price of the model stays down because it is a detriment. I think you get them a little bit cheaper because of that. Another interesting thing that they have that is definitely not a detriment is tactical awareness, which is a common thing you see on tags. And basically, what that does is it's just an extra order. So every time you have one of these guys on the field, they just get an extra turn to do stuff, which is super handy, especially if you want them to sort of take a lot of the orders from all your other models and be the sort of star of the show and go on a tear through your opponent's models. They just get one extra go, which is pretty useful.
And that's definitely something you're going to want to do with this model. It is absolutely an attack piece.
Yeah, yeah. If you're not doing a bunch of damage with him, you're probably not. He's going to be about a sixth of your army, a little less than a sixth of your army. So you want to make sure you're getting your money's worth. I will say the Spitfire, especially the AP Spitfire, is a super good weapon. It's one of my favorite weapons in the game. Like you said, you can get up to 6 dice. That's really gross. Um, Rolling a lot of dice is really good because it makes you more consistent and it makes it less like your opponent's going to hit you back. The Spitfire is more of like a mid-range weapon, so it makes it good for a model that wants to go run into your opponent and try to find better sight lines or get closer to things that are dangerous at range and things like that. So I really like the Spitfire. I think it's a really solid weapon, especially for something that you want to push up the field. The other option that you have is the heavy rocket launcher, which can be really useful. It's a little bit more of a long range thing, but it can also blow up multiple things that it hits. So it can hit. You can shoot it with a template, so that you kind of put down a big circle on the target, and then anything that's near it takes some of the damage, which can be a really good way to hit things that are hiding like behind walls and in sneaky places.
Yeah, because if you can see one of the targets, you shoot at that guy, and then when you place the template, if it clips over anyone else, even if they're not in line of sight, they're affected, which is nice. So if your opponent is careless, you can really remove a lot of pieces.
Yeah, and what you'll see a lot of people do is you'll see somebody that will sort of set up, like we call it an arrow piece. So it's like a model that's going to be set up to sort of stop your advance or slow your advance by just kind of watching certain angles of attack and shooting at you or harassing you as you're approaching. And what they'll often do is they'll throw a medic near them hiding. So they'll be like ducking down behind cover and they'll be off to the side ready to run over and pick the sniper or whoever it is back up in the event that they get hurt. If they put them too close and you shoot a rocket at the person that's shooting at you, you may be able to take the medic out with them, which is very useful because not only do they lose their medic, but that's another order that they're not going to be able to use. And it's a model that, unless you had some other particular tech to get to them, you may not ever be able to see them because they're going to hide them and have them, like, you know, prone down on the ground so that you have to, like, climb up onto a building, and it's just not worth it otherwise. So, generally, not a huge fan of the Ratnik, I'm hearing, but definitely, I would say for early games, gonna be fun to put him down on the table just to see how a big tanky thing fares on an attack run and trying him out. But maybe something that might fall out of your list later on once you level up a little bit. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you're gonna take it, you should take the Frontific Engineer to be his little battle buddy because he's gonna get locked out. He's gonna get isolated. So you want someone who can kind of oil up his joints again, keep him moving.
Yeah. So the engineers are basically like medics for your robots or your heavy infantry. In the event that they get hacked, you can try to fix them. I guess you can't heal him with an engineer, right? Because he's technically
No,
heavy
he's
infantry.
Vita, so you would need the paramedic.
Right.
But I find between 2 wounds and dogged, I've never tried to actually heal a Ratnik before.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So Dogged, that's the one that we didn't touch on. So Dogged works kind of like NWI, no wound incapacitation. Only at the end of that phase, they die. So the idea is they
Yeah,
get
at
this,
the
like,
end of the turn where he goes dogged, he will die at the end of it.
right. So you get the, like, one last chance to try to do something, and then but you're guaranteed to be dead after that. So I think you can't even heal out of Dogged, right?
No, you can't.
Yeah. But that is cool because it kind of makes him like pseudo 3 health total.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. It's really nice.
Unfortunately, you'll be on the worst profile for your second and third health, but
Well, at least his BS doesn't drop anymore. That's
Mm.
something they changed recently.
Oh, did it used to go down?
Yeah, it used to go down to 12.
Yeah, I mean, it's his move going down isn't great if you're on an attack run. Uh, Going from 16 to 14 close combat is probably not relevant because you probably don't want him to be in close combat anyway. Although he does have a trench hammer, which is pretty cool. It's a very dangerous melee weapon, but you probably don't want this guy in close combat anyway. Um, the fizz going down again, not super important. The armor is definitely the thing. The thing I think that is going to be tough here is once you take that first point of damage, it's much more likely you're going to take another one if you get dropped again.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The fact that he keeps his BS means that you can potentially still take out quite a few enemy models as long as you have them in a good spot. Um,
Yeah,
because he's
doesn't
still
matter if your armor is low or if you're the one winning the gunfights.
right. I was just going to say, if you have him in the right spot, he's just as deadly as he was prior. It's just that it's a little more risky, but um, that's what you want to do with this guy anyway. So next up we have Vasily Pleshchenko, something like that. Tank Hunter Officer. So this is you'll often see in Infinity where you'll get sort of a named character version of another profile. So it'll have a lot of similarities, but it'll have some special rules that you get because they're like the fancy person, the named character. So I think you mentioned before we started that you're not a huge fan of this guy. What's the problem? Why do you hate Vasily?
I don't hate him. He's just if you're gonna take him, you're taking the chain of command with the T2 sniper rifle, and you're using him either as like an arrow surprise attack or as an active turn shooter. He's basically like a super scout. But for 39 points, when I could just take a regular tank hunter chain of command for almost half the cost, I don't know. Maybe I'm just spoiled with all my cheap options in tech.
It's possible. It's definitely possible. Yeah, I mean, I will say that was my first reaction when I saw him was, wow, that's expensive. Um, BS Attack AP is really cool. It means that all of his guns are going to have armor penetration, which, depending on the matchup, might be really, really important. Comes in as camo marker. Decoy 2. Tell us about Decoy 2.
That just means so he comes in as a camo marker, and you're going to drop two other Min 3 camo markers within 8 inches of him, which is useful because it's more potential threats that your opponent doesn't know about.
Yeah.
But they're actually useless outside of the perceived threat. And the second you pop about to attack, you're going to remove the decoy markers anyway.
Yeah. So it's just basically a way to confuse your opponent. It looks like there's three of him. They don't know which one is the right one. But once he's revealed, the other ones go away, and he's back to just being a Mim 3,
Yeah.
a Mim 3 dude. He has 1 health, but he does have Dogged as well, so he kind of has an extra half health, sort of, that he'll hang on for a while and cause some trouble. The 4 profiles, we have the T2 Marksman Rifle, T2 Sniper Rifle, and then you basically have the Chain of Command or the Lieutenant Forward Observer, and then both permutations of either of those. So the Marksman Rifle is the one that it comes with. Technically, the model that you get is the one with the Marksman Rifle. Do you which of the two do you prefer here? Because I've had very mixed results with Marksman Rifles. They're kind of like a medium to long range piece, but they I often find that I wish I had a different weapon when I had a Marksman Rifle. I know there are
If,
people that are big
yeah.
fans, but
If I'm taking Vasily, I'm shooting with him. And if I'm shooting with him, I want the AP T2 sniper rifle because it's damage 5, AP, and if you fail it, you're gone. It's 2 damage.
yeah.
So that would be the significantly more dangerous of the two shooters.
Yeah, I think a T2 sniper rifle is scary. And add AP to that, and that's a pretty nice combination there.
Yeah, if I knew I was going against military orders, I'd take them every time.
Yeah, if you know they're gonna have a lot of heavy armor, you're gonna want it. Yeah, but I think I'm kind of with you of like, for the points, there's better choices. Like 40, almost 40 points for what we just discussed is not like putting him head to head with a tank hunter for the difference in points. You're getting Dogged, a few other little bits and pieces, but I don't see it.
Yeah. You could make him work, like he's not unusable, but I just feel like there's a lot better juice out there in this army.
Yeah, yeah. It's often one of the cases of like for the role that we talked a lot in the last video that I did like this of like the different roles that you're going to need to fulfill in your list, and for the thing that you want this model to be doing, there's options that can do it almost as good for significantly cheaper, or potentially just as good or better for around the same price. It's just the points I think are the problem with him. It does seem like, at least for the sort of theme of the way that this box is laid out, he's kind of intended to be your lieutenant. And notably, your lieutenant does get an additional order, which means, in theory, he can be a little bit more useful, but it also means that it's even riskier, and when he does go down, it's going to hurt even more. So, although you could do it the opposite way around, and you could do the Vet Kazakh as the lieutenant and have him as the chain of command. So,
Yeah, or take the tank hunter in the box as your chain of command.
yeah, so then it's way less risky to expose him and have him go down.
Yeah, I think if I was going to take Vasily, I'd probably just take the T2 sniper rifle scout for 25 points.
Right. Yeah, I mean, having AP on the sniper rifle, again, matchup dependent, can be super good.
Yeah, the scout has BS attack AP too, so like there's no
Oh, okay.
difference
Never
in the
mind.
threat of the gun.
I
It's
think I'm
almost half the points, yeah.
yeah. Yeah,
You're
for
just
half the
losing
points,
one
it's fine.
BS.
Yeah, I would probably say similar to the Ratnik, like definitely give him a try, see how it goes, but once you start playing, he might be something that falls out of the rotation. The second to last model we have here is the Strelok. So Strelocks, I think this is something that does see some rotation in your lists. What's the story with the Strelocks?
I usually take 2 in all of my lists, to be honest. I take the mine layer or the forward observer. with the boarding shotgun. Those are my favorite. The marksman rifles, what comes in the box, I often just proxy that as a second scout with an Ohotnik.
Hmm.
What's funny is I actually proxy the scout with a boarding shotgun as a second Strelok.
You just switch them.
Yeah, I literally just swap them.
Yeah. I mean,
I
everything in this
think
army is
that,
just like a dude with
yeah,
some green armor on, so it's not, it's not too far off.
yeah, I think the T2 marksman rifle might be interesting. It just got BS12, and
Mm.
the reason I never took the marksman rifle previously was because it was BS11.
Yeah, BS11 is typically for two things. One is like extremely cheap models like your line infantry, and the other is guys that are going to have shotguns because at close
Yeah,
range you get +6 instead of +3. Most weapons can only go up to +3 for their best range man, but you can get +6 on a boarding shotgun. So the idea is they're a little worse at shooting, but if you're using a shotgun and you're using it the way you should be, it doesn't matter because you're going to get +6, which is huge. Um, so it makes sense that their non-shotgun loadouts would have a slightly better ballistic skill because otherwise you're shooting on 11s and that's not great. Um, so the two options that you mentioned, the boarding shotgun, mine layer, and forward observer, I assume that like a lot of your other stuff here, the idea is their camo tokens, they're going to confuse your opponent so they don't know what to do, and you're going to kind of have them in the middle of the board being
yeah.
annoying.
What I normally do is I'll take two Strelok mine layers. They're 8 inches past your deployment zone. 6 camo tokens between the two of them. Two of them are mines, so I usually have those like guarding objectives in the middle. And then if you disrespect the camo token and it's a boarding shotgun guy, you're probably going down.
Yeah, so we didn't really touch on exactly what. Oh, and to add to that, they have decoy, which is just let's add more tokens to the board and make it more confusing. Um, we didn't explicitly explain how mines work, but it's pretty important because you're going to have a lot of them if you want to in this army. So basically, you're going to put a token down that your opponent's not going to know what it is. It's a camouflage token. It looks just like to them. It looks just like all the other camouflage tokens. Um, if they spend the time and the effort to try to discover what it is, they'll know it's a mine and they can probably just shoot it and blink it off the board. But it's going to take them a bunch of orders to do it, which is good for you because they're wasting their resources.
Yeah, I think in our battle report, actually, you spent at least 5 orders over the course of the game trying to discover what was just a decoy token.
Yeah, it was every turn. I was like, oh, I have this extra order I can spend. Let me just try to discover that and fail, and fail, and fail, and fail. I failed multiple times. It
And
was
it was just a cardboard cutout of a real guy.
yeah. Um, so, but the important thing with the mines is if you kind of want to set them up in ways that are going to control what your opponent's doing or protect certain areas of the board. Because if your opponent does walk within 8 inches of one of them, it will go off, and basically they just have to take a save against whatever the effect of the mine is. Which, depending on the model that's taking it, it may be a huge deal, and you may either kill it or you may put it out of action if it's an EM mine. It can potentially shut down a robot or a tag, or there's a bunch of bad stuff that it can do. And if you're a tank, if you're a mine layer, you're just getting that on the board for free. So it's not only going to add to the confusion that your opponent has to deal with trying to figure out what's what, but if they do challenge the wrong one, thinking it's a dude that's just cloaked or camouflaged, and they run over and a mine blows up, it could actually shut them down entirely. So it's tricky.
Yeah, they also make great like deployment zone guards
Mm.
because there's no line of fire on a mine. There's no line of fire on a camo token, period. So you throw one of those in your back line, and now all of your opponent's parachutist deployment zone is extremely risky.
Right, they don't have a facing, so depending on how you set it, you're deploying. There may be blind spots where your opponent can, if they have special rules, they can deploy into your deployment zone, jump behind you, and really cause a lot of problems. But mines don't have that problem because they can see in every direction. So um, they're really good defensively for just blocking off areas of the board, protecting your backline, whatever you want them to do. Especially when you have access to so many of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Again, a bunch of profiles here that can do objectives, which is good. You have a forward observer, you have a specialist operative. There are profiles that have SMGs, which again are really short range, not super spectacular weapons. But they do have chain cults, which means that they have a template weapon that's available to kind of defend up close. What is the K9 loadout?
So the canine is just a peripheral synchronized. It's a little clunky to use. It's also very obvious what it is. Like it gives up the game by existing because when you put down a fat camouflage MIM3 token, you know immediately it's an antipode. And if you're only putting one down, you know that the other marker is a Strelok.
Yeah, so it's basically like a
Yeah.
buddy little werewolf dude, which is one of the cool things about this army is that you can take antipodes and dog warriors that are these big they're basically werewolves. There's a little more to that in the lore, but they're basically werewolves for anyone getting into the game. Um, and they can be very strong. I guess you would need the model though, and the kit doesn't come with the model, so in theory,
Yeah, it would be impossible to use with just the action pack.
yeah. So maybe don't worry about that for now, but it is a cool option if you want to go that route. You can run a bunch of
It's
them.
definitely fun to use. I've used it once.
Yeah.
When you get both of them in line of sight, it becomes a very tricky choice.
Right.
You can really force some hard decisions on your opponent.
Hmm. They're also they tend to be very fast, so the dogs are scary just because if you don't stop them quickly, they're gonna do bad things to you.
I'm also a big fan of like hugging a corner with a Strelok and then dropping the mine where you're out of line of sight of your opponent, but the mine where you place it will be in line of sight. And then with your next order, you kind of pop out. So if they shoot at you, the mine goes off and kills them. And if they dodge, you're at a -3 from the mine, and you can just boarding shotgun them for free.
Yeah, because of the way the sort of order of operations when you're the active player and the order of how your actions and then your opponent gets the opportunity to respond. If you set it up like that, you basically put your opponent in a position where they have two choices and both of them are bad choices. Because they have to decide what they're going to do and then you can respond to what they do. So you can either keep yourself safe or make sure they go down. The last one in the action pack that you're going to get is the Frontovic Engineer. So we talked about it before, but engineers are models that can repair constructs, remotes, tags, things like that.
Yeah, and they can push buttons too.
They can push buttons, which is really important, and also they can try to fix things like your Ratnik if it gets hacked and gets a sort of negative state that's going to stop it from doing cool stuff. What do you think about the Frontovic otherwise, the engineer?
So there's 3 Frontovic profiles I take often. One would be the AP sniper rifle, which you've faced a million times. That's my big ARO piece. The other 2 are the paramedic or the engineer, depending on what kind of duo I'm putting them in. So if I'm taking the Vet Kazakh with HMG, I'll take the paramedic. If I'm taking the Ratnik, I'll take the engineer.
I mean, BS-12, which is not spectacular, they're shooting on a 12, but they have MIM-3, so your opponent's going to be shooting you back at a -3. The AP sniper rifle, not only is it an armor penetrating sniper rifle, which is good just in and of itself, but it's pretty cheap at 28 points, and it has a multispectral visor. So tell us about multispectral visors, because I think this is the first time it's come up, and it's one of the rare instances of tech that you get in this army.
Yeah, it's actually the only multispectral
Is it?
visor I have access to.
That
Yeah,
figures.
we don't have MSV level 2. We only have level 1. It's pretty good. I mostly just use it. Um, I don't even bother with the multispectral visor. Like I don't try to smoke shoot or anything with it because it would just it's not good on MSV1.
Hmm.
What it is good for is if your opponent also has MIM3. Now they don't.
Yeah, so this is basically like fancy optics that will let you shoot a little bit more accurately, and it gives you options for getting around smoke, which is one of the things that your opponent will use to try to stop you from shooting them when they're running up the board. But like you just mentioned, the big thing is if your opponent has mimetism, this reduces their mimetism by 3. So if they have mim 6, you get them down to mim 3, and if they have mim 3, they're 0. So that can put you from a even trade to having a pretty significant advantage in a gunfight. And
Yeah,
again,
I
for
think
28 points, pretty good.
the strength of the front of it is how many fire teams they have access to. Like you're never going to take them on their own.
Mm-hmm.
When I take the MSV sniper, he's usually in a line Kazakh fire team. If I'm taking the engineer or the paramedic, it's a duo with one of my attack pieces. They're pretty useful, and if your main guy goes down, still a T2 rifle. They still have an assault pistol, which is like I think it's burst 4. So if you get up close, it can actually be kind of gnarly and can kind of catch people off guard.
Mm-hmm.
And the engineer actually has a Panzerfaust, which is it's funny to surprise people with that sometimes.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a are they single use or two uses rocket launcher?
Yes, it's disposable too,
Right.
and it's AP plus explosive at damage 6. So if you hit with it, it's going to ruin someone's day.
Right. Yeah, you don't have a lot of chances, but if you do, if you find yourself in a pickle, you can use that to threaten somebody, and it can be very useful. The other cool thing about these guys is they have a lot of options. So you have the T2 rifle, you have the AP Spitfire, which again, great weapon. Maybe not perfect for this guy, but I really like them. Heavy rocket launcher, um, the engineer with the Panzerfaust, and the AP sniper rifle with the MSV. There's a paramedic loadout, and there's also a lieutenant option. I don't see a good reason to use this lieutenant, especially when you have other better choices for lieutenants in this army.
Yeah, if you're taking the Frontovic lieutenant, you're better off just taking a line Kazakh lieutenant for 9 points.
Right. Yeah, one of the things we talked about in the Corregidor chat, which I think is really good to highlight, especially even for new players, and it's something that people should think about is if your opponent knows what they're doing, they're going to try to figure out who your lieutenant is and go kill them. So one of the things that you will often do is you'll try, if you have options on the board, things that are potentially obvious choices for your lieutenant, you'll try to have two of them. So that if your opponent is going to take a risk to go try to assassinate your lieutenant, there's always a chance that the other one is the lieutenant, and it's probably going to disincentivize your opponent from doing it enough that they may not bother. Because it's like, okay, I'll take the risk, and then maybe I'll kill your lieutenant, but maybe I won't, and then I'll lose my, whatever it is that they're doing it with. So if you're doing a line Kazakh lieutenant, it's 9 points, and then you hire another, basically a doppelganger of him, and it's 9 points. If you're going to do this guy, it's 21 points, and his doppelganger is also 21 points. So you're looking at increasing the price a lot and basically getting mimetism out of it.
Maybe it's almost useful to hire it just because no one would ever do it. So people just will not assume he's your lieutenant because that'd be ridiculous.
You know, that's part of the mind game of Infinity and the lieutenants. And again, it's one of those things that like most newer players are probably not are going to probably not spend a lot of time thinking about this type of thing and like going after the model that might be your lieutenant. But it's good to think about and consider.
Yeah, and just keep in mind that TAC doesn't have any access to NCO, so whatever lieutenant you have, either you're going to reveal it when you spend the lieutenant order, or you're throwing away your lieutenant.
Yeah, so NCO is an ability that basically, whoever your lieutenant is, they get an extra order that is just dedicated to them as the lieutenant order. But if you do that, then your opponent's going to know who they are. So that's obviously not something you want to do unless you're really, really need it. But if you have NCO is an ability that lets another model spend that lieutenant order like it's theirs, which is really good because you don't have to reveal who your lieutenant is. But if you don't have that option, which it sounds like you don't, then you're either not using your lieutenant order or you're going to immediately reveal who your lieutenant is. So that's definitely
Yeah,
tricky.
that's another big reason I take for Ronin pretty much every game because he has Strategos, so it just turns his lieutenant order into a regular order that I can spend wherever I want.
Yeah. Pretty cool stuff. So technically the front of it you get is the engineer with the light rocket launcher. That's not even a profile anymore, I don't think.
No, it was
Panzerfaust.
the engineer profile, so now it's a Panzerfaust.
Yeah. Same idea, I guess. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think you already said it, but just to highlight it again, the two profiles that you like are the AP sniper rifle and the engineer. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll also take the paramedic if I'm taking the Vet Kazakh HMG.
Yeah. Always good
I've
to have
never
a
actually
good
used
option.
it to heal him, but you never know. Sometimes if you want to risk it.
Yeah, I mean it's always good to have that option because if you do have a model that goes down and you don't have any option to heal them,
Yeah.
it's the same as having them be dead. So you might having some kind of healing ability is always useful.
Yeah, and it's also just nice to have a button pusher for 23 points.
Yeah. Yeah, although it sounds like you're going to have a ton of button pushers for very few points anyway,
Yeah,
so that's not really something you're hurting for across this army.
it's
Um,
just one of those incidental button pushers that make it into all my lists.
and people shouldn't underestimate that because having somebody who can just run, even if you didn't plan to have this person go run an objective when you're in turn 3 and a lot of your models are dead and a lot of your opponent's models are dead and you're like, okay, I need somebody to get over here and do this thing. It can come in pretty clutch if you have somebody that just happens to be there and can push a button. Whereas if you don't have a bunch of specialists, you may have somebody that has to run all the way across the board, and that might not be doable when you don't have a lot of orders. So I have definitely made
Yeah,
that mistake multiple times.
it's definitely possible if you take too few specialists to get locked out of the mission.
Mhm.
Like if I ask you how many specialists you have and you tell me 2, and I have the first turn, I'm going to try to kill both of them,
Hell
and
yeah.
then you can't push any buttons.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I've definitely made that mistake multiple times where I'm like, oh, will be my button pusher. Oh, but he dead. So now my options are table you,
Yeah,
or I'm
exactly.
screwed. Yeah, so that's always good to have. So that covers the entire action pack. That's kind of again for most people, this is probably what you're going to start with when you pick up this army. You're probably going to buy the action pack because it's just a good value. It's going to get you your line Kazakhs, your basic dudes, a bunch of other good options. Now that we've kind of gone through them, what do you see as the big strengths of Tartary and kind of how would you characterize their play style generally?
I think that they are very forgiving defensively. Like they have what Infinity players call a crumple zone, which is a mixture of models that are not a huge loss to you if they die, and also things that distract your opponent. So that'd be like armed turrets, mines, decoys, anything that starts in a camo or token state will burn orders trying to uncover it.
Mm-hmm.
And the camouflage state to begin with is very forgiving because there's no facing. So you're not going to get shot in the back a lot because you have a huge midfield of things that have basically 360 visors until they reveal themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Um,
I think also like you said, it being forgiving defensively, I think that's really a good way to put it because being that you have so many things that are going to be in camo state, your opponent can go reveal all of them, or it may have tech that reveal like. So, for example, there's an ability that lets you just pulse out a thing that reveals all the camo markers within 8 inches of a model. It's called Sensor, which is really good, but even if your opponent does that, they're probably going to spend a bunch of activations getting into the position with the right model to do that. But even if they do that, most of the stuff they're going to reveal in this army is going to be stuff that you don't really care about anyway. Like
yeah, they're
maybe
mostly
it's a
just
mine.
finding the garbage in the street.
Yeah, right, exactly. Maybe it's a mine, and then your opponent goes and shoots the mine, and it doesn't kill anyone, but you just took 3, 4, 5 orders for them away from them to take care of that mine, which is a great trade for you. Or maybe they reveal, a dude with a shotgun who's hiding behind a wall, and they don't have any good options to take him out anyway. So now they know who he is, great, but they still can't go over there. Doesn't really help them very much.
Yeah, and I think the lack of hackable models in this faction is also very good because if your opponent is playing heavily into the Infowar game, they're they're kind of out of options here.
Yeah, these are kind of the extreme opposite of Corregidor, who we talked about last time, because Corregidor's big thing is hacking and setting up hacking networks, and these guys are kind of like, we don't care. You can set up your hacking network, and the best you're gonna get is spotlight on a bunch of guys, which means we're a little easier to shoot at, but You know.
Yeah, you cannot hack my bolt-fed rifle.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but again, that makes them more forgiving because, especially if you're playing against an opponent, if you're new and you're playing against an opponent who has some experience and they're good at setting up hacking, that can be something that's very difficult to face as a new player. But with these guys, you kind of just don't have to worry about it. I mean, again, the Ratnik does, but aside from him, there's not much in the army that has to care about it across the board. So
Yeah, I think there's like 3 unit entries that are hackable.
naturally, Corregidor is my favorite sectorial, and Tartary's yours. So I basically just can't do anything against with my main thing. It does no
Oh,
good.
just take a guided missile bot and spotlight everything.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I think that's a good way to put it. I think obviously, um, camo markers in particular are a huge thing for this army. That's definitely one of their kind of defining traits. Um, I also think having some unusually good guns, some unusually punishing shooting is another thing. Like they have a lot of T2, which is like you may not be good at shooting, but if you do get that shot in, it's gonna hurt a lot. Um, Even just in this box, you're getting like 3 or 4 models that have armor piercing. Um,
Yeah, they
some
have a lot of AP because they have almost no hacking. Their one hacker kind of stinks.
right,
So if you're dealing with a tag or another like heavy armored guy, your only option is to shoot it.
yeah, but it can be very effective because I can remember a game that we played a while back where I think I was running the Blue Wolf Cavalry in uh, White Banner, and the T2 ammo, you just happen to clip him, you hit him with the T2, and it put him down to 1 health, and I was like, oh, I
Yeah,
really
all of
gotta
a
worry
sudden
about this
it's
now.
risky to use them.
Yeah, so it's like, the odds are still in my favor dramatically because I had set it up in that way that like if we shoot each other, I'm almost certainly going to hit you, but if I don't, I'm just going to die. And that's
Yeah,
not a
exactly.
risk I want to take with a 60-point model. So, um and it can be kind of surprising when you see something like that. Especially for the price point. I think another big advantage is you can get a lot of stuff on the table for not that many points. There are some armies that have a really hard time getting up to 15 activations. I don't think this army is one of them. I think you're going to get a lot of dudes on the board without much trouble.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever taken less than 15 models in this army. Actually, I find it hard to spend all my SWC.
Yeah, so I mean, not only that, but it also means that you can do things like just for fun upgrade guys to specialists, and I think that's the other big thing that I've seen with them is pushing buttons. They're good at that. They have lots of dudes that can run objectives, which is always important.
Yeah, you're really not going to lock them out of the objective that way.
Yeah,
If you've killed all my specialists, I'm in retreat usually.
yeah. The game already is already over. Yeah, 100%. Um, all right, cool. So, is there anything that you would suggest to people for next purchases after the action pack? I think it's usually a good idea. I think most people would agree that if you're brand new to the game, you should not start at like full point games. You shouldn't even start at half point games. You should start at less than that. So the action pack is going to probably get you through at least a couple of games to just sort of learn how the basics of the game work. But if somebody's at the point where they've played with everything in the action pack and they want to go up from there, what are some good models to pick up after that? What are the good next purchases?
I would probably say all of the war bands. So you're going to want to pick up the dog warriors. I mean, the werewolves are why you play this faction in the first place. And then you're going to want to pick up the box of Ermendinos because they're 8-point engineers with chain rifles and Fizz 14 smoke grenades, which is just incredible.
Yeah, so let's talk about the Dog Warriors first. So I kind of figured they were going to come up. They're definitely one of your favorites. Tell me how these guys work because these are the guys that you hurt them and then they get better they get more dangerous.
Yeah, they get worse for you.
Right, worse for the person shooting at them.
I mean, they're 3 wound models. They start off at arm 1, but they have transmutation. But if they take a wound, they get better instead of worse. Um, Impetuous and irregular, so they have a free order at the start of the turn. They start off at Fizz 14, they go up to Fizz 16, and they have smoke grenades. So they're very reliable uh, line of sight controlling pieces, which is nice. They they have chain rifles, so they can trade really well with their 3 wounds. Because if I super jump in front of you and you shoot at me, I have 3 wounds. I'm comfortable taking that hit. I will chain rifle you and just get a free hit, and it's +1 burst. So you're taking 2 damage 7 attacks, which most people do not want to do.
Right.
So they get a lot of uncontested movement, because if I super jump, you're probably dodging, and then I can do something else. I can walk, or maybe I do attempt to shoot at you anyway.
Yeah, so super jump basically just lets them hop around the board and kind of avoid a lot of terrain pieces and different things that might get in their way. It also lets them move a little faster than they would otherwise. They have dodge +1 inch, so if they do have to dodge, instead of only moving 2 inches, they're going to move 3. They don't benefit from cover, so there's no reason to keep them up against walls and hiding, because they don't benefit from it anyway, which is a detriment, because it means it's easier to hurt them or easier to hit them. But like you
Yeah,
said,
you're not
smoke
going to win a
grenades.
lot of BS attack face-to-face rolls, but you're usually not taking those to begin with.
Yeah. But having smoke grenades is huge because, again, we mentioned this earlier, but being able to throw smoke, you can kind of cover an entire area of the board and then just move past your opponent's defensive shooters, because they can't see you anymore unless they have the right tech to get around it. So that's really good. The other thing is they're pretty dangerous in close combat, which is not something that we really talked much about in this army so far. They don't have a lot of the fancier close combat stuff, but their stat for close combat is 23, which means that they succeed no matter what they roll, and if they roll a 1, 2, or a 3, they crit in addition to rolling a 20, which is super good. Plus, they have damage, possibility of survival 4, and AP on their close combat attack. So
Yeah, they're another good option to attack tags with, because if you get them to touch it, you're probably punking that tag very quickly. And they're immunity arm, so whatever
that's the big one.
weapons or arrows are coming in, they're not doing a lot of damage. Like if it's explosive, I don't care. I'm still taking 1 save.
Yeah, so immunity arm basically means any special rules that your opponent's damage has, as long as it's testing against armor, you ignore it. So explosive, T2 you would ignore, and also armor penetrating, which is really good because you're always going to be at armor 3. So armor 3 is not spectacular, but you're never going to have to test at less than that. So they're pretty tricky to deal with, and on top of all that, you start in your human form, so you're a little less scary. But as soon as you take your first point of damage, you turn into your dog warrior form, your big scary werewolf, and then you have another 2 health to chew through to get rid of these guys. So you can be very aggressive with them and not have to worry too much about the consequences, because they have enough. Unless you get really unlucky, they have enough health to still just run into your opponent's face and do bad things to them.
Yeah, I find myself often using their impetuous order to take an ARO from the opponent so that they transform on my terms.
Yes, you've
So
done
like
that
I'll
to me
literally
several
just
times.
walk in front of my opponent's guns and be like, all right, you can either shoot me and make me better, or not shoot at me and I'll just get a bunch of free movement.
Yeah. Yeah, ideally what we would do is we would hit you for multiple damage on the first one while you still have lower armor, but it doesn't usually work that way, so.
Yeah, it's hard to do with immunity arm. You basically have to get multiple hits.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely tricky. Definitely, again, like you said before, kind of forgiving defensively, where, there's kind of extra layers of thing. If you screw up once, you're probably not just gonna re-rack and call it a game. You can take a couple of bad rolls or a couple of misplays and not have to just throw the whole game out the window, because you have immunity arm, you have multiple health, you have all these cool things to serve as backups. Ermendinos, I think, are probably, that's the other thing that you mentioned, and I think they're probably one of my favorite profiles in this army.
Yeah, I've never not taken one.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine you wouldn't. They, they start at 8 points, which is exceptionally cheap. They are irregular, so they're not giving you orders that your other models can use. But they have chain rifles, so up close, they can be really deadly. And more importantly, they have smoke grenades. So,
Yeah.
the way I envision using these guys would be to use the smoke grenades to cover the other models that I care about. They're really cheap. They're getting that irregular order anyway, so you can kind of move them up the board, throw the smoke in the important position, and then have your other models run through the smoke and not have to worry about taking shots on the way. Anything else that I'm not seeing here that they're particularly useful for? I mean, a boarding shotgun is always useful in the right
I've
circumstance.
never taken the boarding shotgun just because it's
More
almost
points.
double the cost.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're regular isn't necessarily negative because you're going to spend their order on themselves anyway. But
Right.
you want to drop that smoke almost every turn. If you're not dropping smoke, you're probably engineering something or pushing a button.
Mm-hmm.
And they have booty as well,
Yeah.
which is it's gotten me some crazy stuff. It's like sometimes you roll Mim 6, and now all of a sudden it's insanely difficult to hit these guys. They're just running around dodging at Fizz 14 and putting you on like -6s.
Yes. So just to highlight it, they're both engineers, which is huge because it means they can do engineer stuff, but also they can push buttons. And an 8 point model that can push buttons, it's super good. Even if there was nothing else on this profile, I would say that an 8 point model that can push buttons is super good. But booty is basically the idea here is that they're like scavengers that find random bits of tech and bring them to the fight. So when you start the game, you're actually going to roll off and they will randomly generate some extra thing that becomes part of their stat line. And that can be anywhere from on the low end, you can get an extra point of armor, a light flamethrower, grenades, all the way on the top end, you can get Mimetism 6. Like, that's pretty crazy on an 8 point model. Um, you can get an HMG. You can get a multi-sniper rifle, just all kinds of stuff. You can increase your movement. You can get a monofilament close combat weapon, which is basically a lightsaber. Um, all kinds of really cool stuff. You can get 2 armor. Like, yeah, it can vary, obviously, and some things are more useful than others, but you're going to get some stuff, and occasionally you're going to get some really good stuff. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah, I have rolled the explosive combat weapon and just turned him into a lawnmower and killed things in close combat. Because they are CC 21 for some ridiculous reason.
Hey, you know, I mean, they don't have any other close combat abilities, and we didn't really get into it here, but there are a variety of close combat abilities that will make you much more of a threat in close combat, or prevent your opponent from doing anything to you in close combat. They don't really have any of that stuff, but CC 21 is definitely not nothing, and if you're going against something that is not good at close combat, that's more than enough, especially if you end up with a lightsaber or an explosive CCW. So that's pretty solid. And again, 8 points, and you can buy 4 of them. So
Yeah, I think most advice for newbies is don't take more than like 2 warbands or like 2 irregular orders in a list. But I have gone up to 4 no problem in Tartary because you want to spend the orders on all of your irregular models. So 2 Armandinos, 2 Dog Warriors is not a detriment because you're using those orders on themselves.
yeah, I think the risk there would be if your opponent is good at getting into your backfield and killing your models that are giving you the other orders. You can spread yourself too thin with the irregular orders because the irregular orders are basically orders that have to be spent on that specific model, unlike a
Yeah,
normal
but
order.
then you could always command token them into regular orders because usually that's not happening till turn 2, turn 3.
Yeah, but my point was only that if you're a new player, it could be a little tricky to understand how to do those things, and also if you're playing at a smaller game size, all of those irregular orders matter more
Oh
because
yeah,
you're gonna
don't
have
take
to do a lot.
4 irregular orders at 200
Yeah,
points. Do it at like 300.
right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, if you're adding 1 or 2 of these guys on top of the action pack and some dog warriors, you know, you might want to start to think about that. You're getting to the point where you're probably not maxing out your points, and you're still going to have 3 or 4 irregulars. But you can always add a couple other normal guys in, and once you get up to a full 15 model list, that's not going to matter quite as much. Very cool. I think that's probably enough to get folks started. If anybody has any questions, obviously get down in the comments. Let us know what you want to know about TAC, or if you're already playing them, let us know how it's going. Mr. Kevin, I want you to give me a blurb. I want you to give me like a couple sentence pitch for someone who doesn't play TAC on why they should play TAC. And you can take that however you want. It can be from gameplay, it can be from the aesthetics, it can be from the lore, whatever you like about them. Why should people play TAC?
I think you want to play TAC if you like being the plucky underdog who punches up efficiently, or if you like playing mind games with your opponents, because you can do that a lot with camo tokens.
I think that's very well said. I think you do both of those things, and it constantly frustrates me, and I'm constantly trying to tailor my list to counter all of your garbage shenanigans because it's terrible and I hate it. I constantly look for censor in my lists now. I'm like, I need to find a way to get rid of all these goddamn camo markers. Yeah, cool. So, I mean, I think so far I've only had you in one of my Infinity Battle reports, but I'm hoping that you're gonna finally paint up enough models to play a full 300 point game. We played with the next wave starter pack, so it was like a 200-ish point game or something like that a couple weeks back. So folks can go check that out if they want to see a little bit about how TAC plays against the new hotness in the Combined Army. But hopefully in the very near future we will have more battle reports going up, and they will very likely feature some TAC that Kevin will be piloting, so stay tuned for that. And thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
I want to send a huge thank you to the Extremely Cool Kids tier on Patreon, the Steam Powered Scoundrels, Robbie Ounce, Tom Likely, Russets, Spanner Rider, Devin, and Blue. And thanks for watching.